The avalanche struck at 2:47 p.m. on January 18, 1891, and Rowan Hale had exactly 40 seconds to get his horse inside the cave. He heard it first, a low rumble that grew into a roar, like the mountain itself tearing open. His horse, Shadow, heard it too and reared in terror, eyes rolling white with panic. "Easy, boy, come on." Rowan yanked the reins, dragging the frantic animal toward what looked like only shadow in the cliff face, a narrow crack half hidden by drifting snow. "Trust me." They plunged through the opening just as the white wall thundered past, close enough that Rowan felt the blast of icy wind and stinging chunks of snow against his back. The sound was world-ending. Millions of tons of snow and rock erasing the trail he had ridden moments before. Then silence. Thick, suffocating silence broken only by Shadow's panic breathing and Rowan's own pounding heart. They were trapped. The avalanche had buried the entrance under what had to be 50 feet of packed snow. No one knew they were here. No one would come looking. Winter in the Montana Rockies was only beginning. The high passes would stay sealed for months. Rowan stood in the darkness, one hand steadying Shadow's trembling neck, and faced the truth. They would die here, slowly by cold and hunger, in a stone tomb. Then he noticed something impossible. The air wasn't as bitter as it should have been. There was a faint smell, earth, minerals, and something warmer. He fumbled for the lantern in his pack, lit it with shaking fingers, and held it high. The flame revealed a narrow passage leading deeper, and from somewhere far ahead came a soft, steady glow, amber, almost like firelight. Rowan led Shadow forward, heart still racing. The passage widened into a chamber, then another, each one noticeably warmer. The glow grew stronger until, after 50 cautious steps, he stepped into a sight that stole his breath. A vast underground cavern, 60 feet across, 30 feet high, bathed in gentle warmth. Hot springs bubbled in natural pools carved into the stone floor, sending curls of steam upward. The walls themselves glowed faintly with mineral veins that cast a soft amber light. The air was easily 60 degrees, maybe more. But the true wonder was in one corner, a clearly man-made living space. A bed of pine branches layered with thick firs, a fireplace carved into the rock, its chimney disappearing into a natural fissure above. Storage alcoves neatly cut into stone, stocked with dried meat, preserved vegetables, tools, blankets, and supplies enough for months. Even a small stone corral for animals. Someone had prepared this place, built it, stocked it, and made it ready for exactly this moment. Rowan stared in stunned silence, then spotted a folded note tucked into a niche near the bed, weighted by a smooth river stone. His hands still trembled as he opened it. "If you're reading this, you survived. Welcome to what the townsfolk called Hale's Folly. The shelter they swore was madness. The hot springs will keep you warm. The supplies will keep you fed. The chimney will carry your smoke safely away. Take care of this place, and it will take care of you. If the snow has sealed you in, and it surely has if you're here in winter, do not panic. You have everything you need to live until spring." Rowan lowered the note slowly, looked at Shadow, who had already begun calmly drinking from a spring-fed pool, and felt something shift inside him. Not fear anymore, wonder, and the first spark of a fierce, burning question. Who built this? And why did they know I would need it? Rowan Hale stared at the note, reading it 3 times to be certain the words were real, and that he had written them himself for months earlier, when he'd finished preparing the shelter. The shelter everyone in Redemption Falls had mocked as madness. And now it was saving his life and Shadow's. 6 months earlier, July 1890. "You're going to do what with your summer?" Sheriff Morton stared at Rowan as though he'd announced plans to wrestle a grizzly. "Excavate and stock a survival shelter in the cave system I found last spring up on Black Peak." They stood in the sheriff's office in Redemption Falls, Montana. Rowan had come to file notice of his intentions, not because he needed permission, but because someone responsible should know where he'd be for months. "Why?" Morton asked, blunt as always. Rowan Hale was 16 years old, a former ranch hand, who'd spent the last few years learning the mountains the hard way, reading weather signs, tracking game, and understanding how the land could turn deadly without warning. He'd survived close calls that took grown men because he prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. Because I found something remarkable, Rowan explained calmly. A cave system on Black Peak with natural hot springs and thermal venting. Enough space to shelter people and animals through the hardest winter. But it needs work, excavation, stocking, and preparation. If I do it right, it could save lives when the big one hits. When the big one hits. Morton raised an eyebrow. Rowan, we get big winters every year. That's Montana. I mean the catastrophic winter. The kind that traps travelers in the high passes for months, kills livestock, and buries trails. They come every few decades. We're overdue. And you're going to stop it with a cave. I'm going to give people a refuge if they get caught in it. That pass sees prospectors, trappers, and freighters. A major storm could strand anyone up there. This shelter could mean the difference between living and dying. Morton shook his head. That pass is 3 miles from town, 1,000 feet up, and buried 8 months of the year. If someone's trapped up there in winter, they're already dead. You're wasting your time, boy. Maybe, Rowan said. But I'd rather waste time than waste lives. Word spread fast through Redemption Falls. Rowan Hale, the quiet teenager who'd shown up 2 years ago looking for ranch work, was spending his summer digging in a cave instead of earning wages like a sensible person. Hale's folly, they called it. Martha Chun at the general store started a betting pool on how long before he quit. Saloon regulars laughed about Rowan's mountain palace over whiskey. Even Father Rodriguez tried gentle counsel. Rowan, my son, I admire your wish to help others, but perhaps there are more practical ways. The church roof leaks. The school needs. The church and school are in town, Father, Rowan said respectfully. They'll survive winter, but someone stranded on that pass won't. Not without shelter. And you believe you can provide it with a cave? I know I can, if I prepare it right. Rowan spent the entire summer on Black Peak. He rode up at dawn with Shadow, his loyal bay gelding, loaded with tools and supplies. He worked until dusk, then rode down exhausted. The next day, he did it again. The cave system was extraordinary. Connected chambers shaped over centuries by underground water. The true gift was the hot springs. Geothermal heat keeping pools at a steady 104 degrees year-round. Steam vented through natural fissures, warming the air inside to a livable temperature even in the deepest winter. Rowan's labor was relentless. He widened the entrance so a horse could enter comfortably, because anyone caught in a storm would likely have one. He carved a proper fireplace with a chimney tied to natural vents. He dug storage alcoves into the walls and sealed them with pine pitch. He built a small stone corral for animals. He fashioned a raised sleeping platform of pine logs covered in traded furs. He even channeled hot spring water into shallow floor trenches for primitive radiant heating. But the heaviest work was stocking. Weeks spent hauling supplies up the mountain. Dried venison and fruit, preserved vegetables, medical kits, blankets, tools, rope, knives, oil lamps, and fuel, horse feed, hay and grain in sealed barrels. Enough to sustain several people and animals for months. By September, the shelter stood ready. Hidden, warm, stocked, and waiting. Rowan left a note in its niche, weighted by a smooth stone, and rode down the mountain one last time before winter closed the high trails. He never imagined he'd be the first to need it. Rowan's first thought, after the shock and gratitude faded, was guilt. The miners, he had been guiding them through the pass when the avalanche hit. Had they made it? He secured Shadow in the stone corral, gave the horse hay and water from the stock supplies, then hurried back to the entrance passage. The opening was packed solid, faint daylight filtering through what looked like 50 feet of compacted snow. Digging out was impossible. It might as well have been solid rock. But he could hear something. Muffled voices and faint shouts from the other side. Hello. Rowan pressed his face to the snow barrier and yelled, "Can you hear me?" A weak response came back. Hale? Hale, is that you? It was Pete Morrison, one of the miners. Pete, are you hurt? Few scrapes, there's 6 of us. The slide split. Caught two of the boys, but missed the rest. We can't reach you. Snow's too deep. Don't try, Rowan shouted. You'll start another slide. Can you make it down to town? A long pause, broken only by wind. Trails are gone, Rowan. We're stuck on a ledge, exposed. We'll freeze before nightfall. Rowan's mind raced. 6 men trapped outside. No shelter. Temperatures already dropping fast. He was safe inside his folly, sealed in with warmth and supplies, but useless if he couldn't reach them. Then he remembered the thermal vents. During the summer, while mapping the cave system, he had discovered narrow fissures in the upper chambers, natural chimneys where hot air rose from the springs below. One of them opened onto the cliff face about 30 feet above the main entrance, hidden behind a rock outcrop. He had even cleared it slightly to improve airflow, never imagining it might become a lifeline. He ran back into the cavern, lantern swinging. Shadow nickered anxiously as Rowan grabbed rope, a shovel, blankets, and a spare lantern from the stores. He tied one end of the rope securely around a stone pillar near the vent shaft, tested the knot twice, then began climbing the narrow, twisting fissure. The passage was tight, barely wide enough for his shoulders, but the rising warm air kept ice from forming on the walls. Hand over hand, he pulled himself upward, boots scraping for purchase, until faint gray light appeared above. He emerged onto a small, snow-dusted ledge, the same outcrop he'd noted months ago. Wind whipped fiercely, but the vent's heat melted snow around the opening, keeping it clear. Below, 30 feet down the cliff face, he saw them. 6 men huddled on a narrow ledge, half buried in drift, faces pale with cold and fear. Pete looked up first, eyes widening in disbelief. Rowan? How in God's name? Hold on. Rowan called, his voice carrying over the wind. He lowered the rope, anchoring it again around a boulder. One at a time, climb up. There's shelter inside. Pete came first, hands numb but determined, followed by the others, shaking, frost-nipped, but alive. The last man, young Tommy Greer, slipped halfway up. Rowan braced and hauled him the rest of the way, both collapsing onto the ledge in exhaustion. When all 6 were safely through the vent and down into the warm cavern, they stood in stunned silence, staring at the bubbling springs, the stocked alcoves, and the corral where Shadow waited calmly. Pete found his voice first. You build all this? Rowan nodded, still catching his breath. Welcome to what the town called Hale's Folly. Tommy laughed, a cracked, disbelieving sound. Folly? This is a damn miracle. Rowan handed out blankets and led them to the fireplace he'd carved months ago. It's just preparation, he said quietly. But it's yours now. We've got heat, food, and water. Enough to last till spring. As the men warmed themselves by the fire, sharing dried meat and hot coffee brewed from the springs, Pete looked at Rowan with new eyes. You saved our lives, kid. All of us. Rowan glanced toward the sealed main entrance, then at the exhausted miners warming their hands. I built it for exactly this, he said. I just didn't know it would be today. Outside, the blizzard raged on. Inside Hale's Folly, 7 men and 1 horse were safe, and the long winter had only just begun. The hot spring steam had to escape somewhere. Rowan had mapped several vents during the summer, narrow cracks where warm air rose to the surface. Pete, listen carefully, he shouted through the snow barrier. Do you see steam rising from the cliff? Thin columns, maybe 20 yards above you. A pause, wind howling. Yeah, I see it. Follow those vents. They lead to smaller openings into the cave system. Tight, but you can squeeze through. Hurry, before the cold takes you. Rowan didn't wait for confirmation. He grabbed a rope, a spare lantern, blankets, and a shovel, then raced deeper into the cavern. Shadow nickered anxiously as he passed the corral. He found the shaft he remembered, a narrow fissure he'd only partially explored, twisting upward where warm air flowed strongest. He could hear faint wind whistling through gaps above. Pete, he called up the shaft. Can you hear me? A distant, muffled reply. Hale, follow the vents. I'm below you, look for openings. It took 3 desperate hours in the freezing gusts outside, But the miners found the cracks, barely wide enough to wriggle through. One by one, they crawled down the shaft, guided by Rowan's lantern below. Pete came last, collapsing onto the cave floor, gasping. "Hale, you're crazy." "Cave saved your lives," Rowan finished. "Welcome to Hale's folly." The look on their faces when they saw the main chamber was worth every month of mockery. Bubbling hot springs casting steam into the amber-lit air-stocked alcoves. The stone corral where Shadow waited calmly, and the fireplace already glowing. "This is," Pete couldn't find words. "You built this? Prepared all this?" Rowan nodded. "Everyone called me crazy." "Yes, but why? How did you know?" "I didn't know when or who would need it. I just knew someone eventually would. The mountains don't care about schedules. They kill when they decide to kill. This cave gives people a chance." They were trapped for 11 weeks. The worst winter Montana had seen in decades. Wave after wave of storms buried the high passes under 30 feet of snow. Outside temperatures fell to -40 and stayed there for days. But inside Hale's folly, 7 men and 1 horse lived in steady warmth. The hot springs kept the air comfortable. Rowan's stockpiled supplies kept them fed. Books and quiet conversation kept them sane. "I used to laugh at you," Pete admitted one evening by the fire. "We all did. Thought you were wasting your time. Now, I'm thinking you're the smartest man in Montana." They rationed carefully. Rowan had stock for 1 or 2, not 7. But mountain men knew how to stretch. They supplemented dried stores with blind cave fish from underground streams, melted snow for extra water, and kept the fire small and efficient. Shadow adapted surprisingly well. The stone corral shielded him from cold. Stored hay and grain kept him strong. The horse seemed to understand this cave was safety. Rowan spent hours with him, brushing, talking, and keeping both their minds steady. "You and me, boy," he'd murmur. "We made it." During the long weeks, the miners asked Rowan to teach them his ways, reading weather signs, preparing for disaster, and thinking like someone who survives against odds. Rowan became a reluctant teacher, sharing lessons learned young and hard. "The key," he told them one night, "is to prepare for things that seem unlikely but would be catastrophic. Everyone prepares for common problems. The uncommon ones are what kill you, so you prepare for those too, even if people think you're crazy." "But how do you know what to prepare for?" young Tommy Greer asked. "You study history. Listen to old-timers. Watch patterns. This region has had killer winters before, roughly every 30 years. We were overdue, so I prepared. You prepared for something you couldn't predict would happen this year. I prepared for something I knew would happen eventually. This year, next year, 5 years from now, it didn't matter. Eventually, someone would be caught on this mountain in a killing storm. Eventually, this cave would save a life. That was worth the work." In late March, after 11 weeks underground, they heard sounds from above, digging and voices calling. The town had mounted rescue parties the moment weather allowed the climb. When daylight poured through the cleared entrance, Rowan and the 6 miners emerged to a stunned crowd. Everyone had assumed them dead. Memorials had been planned. Families had mourned. "How?" Sheriff Morton asked simply, staring at 7 men and 1 horse that should have been corpses. "Hale's folly," Pete Morrison said, voice thick. "The cave we all mocked him for building. It saved every one of us." The story spread across Montana like wildfire. The crazy hermit who'd wasted a summer digging in a cave had saved 7 lives, including his own. Rowan Hale, the quiet teenager they'd laughed at, was suddenly a hero. Newspapers sent reporters. The territorial governor rode up to see the shelter. Mining companies asked Rowan to consult on emergency refuges for their camps. Redemption Falls officially named the Cave Hale Sanctuary and voted funds to maintain and expand it. But the deepest honor came from an unexpected place. The Blackfoot elder, whose people knew these mountains best, arrived one spring day. He studied the cavern, the springs, and the careful stores, then spoke through a translator. "You build a place of survival. You followed old wisdom. Prepare for the big cold, shelter the traveler, and share what you have. This is the way of the mountains. We honor it. They gave Rowan a name in their language. He who prepares the path. It is given, the elder said, to those who clear the way for others to live. Rowan accepted it with quiet humility. I just did what seemed right. The mountains kill without warning. I built a place where they couldn't reach. 5 years later, Hale's sanctuary saved 12 more lives in another brutal winter. Then 8 decades after, Rowan kept improving it, training volunteers to help. The cave became a legend, a refuge that existed because one young man refused to ignore what the mountains could do. When Rowan Hale died in 1923 at 69, over 300 attended his funeral. Among them were 47 people and their children who owed their lives to the shelter he'd carved from stone. His marker stands at the trailhead leading to the sanctuary. Asterisk, Rowan Hale, 1854 to 1923. He who prepares the path. He built shelter from stone. He carved safety from a mountain. He saved lives from winter, while others only laughed. Asterisk. The cave itself still exists, expanded, improved, and now managed by the Montana Park Service as an official emergency refuge. It has saved over 200 lives since Rowan first shaped it. Beside the original note he wrote, now preserved under glass, hangs a plaque with words from Pete Morrison. We thought Hale was crazy for building this. We laughed at him all summer. Then winter came and proved us wrong. The lesson isn't that Hale was right. It's that we were wrong to mock someone preparing for our survival. Modern survival experts study Hale's sanctuary as a masterclass in disaster preparedness, anticipating needs, using natural resources brilliantly, and proving one person's careful foresight can save many. But perhaps the most touching tribute belongs to Shadow, Rowan's horse. The animal lived another 15 years, dying peacefully at 23. Rowan never parted with him. That horse trusted me, Rowan would say, when I asked him to run into a dark cave as the mountain fell. That kind of trust deserves a lifetime. He buried Shadow near the entrance with a simple marker. Shadow, the first life saved by Hale's sanctuary. Because in the end, the story of Hale's sanctuary isn't only about a young man who built refuge from stone. It's about trust. Trust in preparation when others mock it. Trust in instinct when everything looks hopeless. Trust that doing the right thing matters, even if no one sees it at the time. The hidden warmth that saved 7 lives and 1 loyal horse. The sanctuary was carved from the mountain while others laughed. The proof that being called crazy is temporary, but saving lives is forever. The mountains still stand. The hot springs still rise. And Hale's sanctuary still waits, quiet, warm, ready for the next storm. Because someone once prepared the path. That was the complete story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next ones. We'll meet again on Hill Destiny with another tale. Take care.